Welcome to tonight's leadership debate for heroines here on Channel 6. My name is Caesar Flickerman, and I will be the mediator of tonight's debate. Our first guest is straight out of District 12 in the chaotic nation of Panem, which has just currently undergone a revolution, Miss Katniss Everdeen. Katniss is known for participating in the 74th and 75th Hunger Games, as well as leading the revolution to take over the all-controlling capital and restore a more democratic rule to the nation. Welcome, Katniss.
Thanks.
Our second guest is a former student at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. She is currently working in the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Miss Hermione Granger. Hermione is known for helping Harry Potter to stop Lord Voldemort over the past 7 years. Welcome, Hermione. Tonight we'll be focusing on two of the latest leadership top sellers, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell, and Emotionally Intelligent Leadership by Marcy Shankman and Scott Allen. The goal is to have our leaders debate and discuss the various laws and concepts presented in these books from their own unique perspectives. We won't have time to cover everything, but I think we've selected several topics that highlight our guests and their own individual leadership styles. One of the laws in Maxwell's book is that of navigation. It states that the leader must chart the course for her followers and have a strong plan before going into action. Katniss, let's start with you. What's your take on this law?
Well, in my personal opinion, there wasn't enough time for any navigation. Things were happening quickly and decisions had to be made. When I was in the arena for the first time, do you think I had a second thought about launching my arrow at Marvel after he speared my friend Rue? The same was true even outside the games, and any kind of long-term planning was futile because everything was constantly changing.
Well, I don't know, Katniss. There were definitely things happening quickly when Voldemort was looking for his Horcruxes. I mean, it was a race to see who could get to them first, but Ron and Harry and I still had to do our fair share of planning to outsmart him. I was constantly doing research and making sure we had a plan, and that was why we eventually reached our success in defeating him. Without the right planning, it wouldn't have been possible.
I suppose some planning was done by people like Hamish and a few others that were instructing me, but those were also the people who basically forced me into my position as an icon for revolution. I liked making my own plans last minute so the people wouldn't guess what my next move was, and regardless, it was hard to know who to trust.
Interesting. Seems like Hermione likes the law of navigation, whereas Katniss, not so much a fan. But it also seems like the amount of trust was very different for each of you in your situations. In that same vein, let's move on to talk about a few laws combined with some concepts from Shankman and Allen's book. There's a common theme among Maxwell's laws of solid ground, connection, and inner circle. The first two are based around the idea of having trusting relationships with others and making connections with them. And the law of inner circle brings these ideas home, saying that a leader must have a strong team of relationship and trust built within their team. These laws also coincide with Shankman and Allen's concept of developing relationships and teamwork, which state the importance of a strong connection for successful leadership. Hermione, let's start with you this time. What do you think about strong, trusting relationships and your success as a leader?
Ooh, I definitely agree that they're absolutely necessary. In particular with Ron and Harry, we're still very close, and Ron and I are actually married. During the time when we were dealing with Voldemort, however, they were crucial. We had to stick together and combine our knowledge to figure out the best ways to deal with all situations. Everyone brought something to the table, and having connections with people like Luna Lovegood and her father, for example, helped us get the information we needed to bring Voldemort down. Trust was a big factor. Our trust in each other allowed us to be more assured when we made decisions. We had each other's backs.
Katniss, what's your take on this? I know you heard a very different situation, and you said earlier that trust is hard to come by.
Yes, Caesar, trust was not something that I really had with anyone, sometimes not even with those closest to me. PETA basically got brainwashed, and even Gale went against my wishes, using explosives to defeat the Capitol. Being vulnerable and opening up to others was the last thing I wanted to do. Although I did not want to be a leadership icon for a revolution, I didn't have a choice. And once I realized that, I knew I just had to be strong and do what I could to stop the Capitol. But I did it while keeping myself protected. Being too vulnerable was risky, and having a wall up allowed me to be strong, making people respect me and not knowing what I'd do next.
I see. So, your situation led you to keep guarded because it was hard to find a trusting relationship, whereas Hermione's situation just didn't.
I couldn't imagine Harry or Ron being brainwashed or turning on me, so I guess that makes a big difference. Katniss, I feel like if you had more trusting and solid relationships, you would have understood why shutting people out can be a negative as a leader.
I guess so, but the point is that I didn't have anyone I could really trust. My environment was very different from yours, and I had to trust myself, not anyone else.
Speaking of trusting yourself, brings us to our next topic, the law of intuition. This law basically says that a leader must sometimes think beyond what is laid before them and just go with their intuition or their gut instinct. In your experience as leaders, what do you think about this? Katniss?
Personally, I relied heavily on my intuition, especially in the arena, but I did even once I got out and had to take down the Capitol. In the 75th Hunger Games, I was trying to figure out the arena, and I remembered seeing a small box in the sky, which I was told had something to do with the force field. And in a moment of desperation, after I'd been attacked, I decided to shoot an arrow into the box, not knowing what would happen, but knowing that something would. And the force field shattered. I found that sometimes you can't wait around for answers. You just have to go with your gut, and honestly, my gut saved me more than once in these last few years of Revolution.
I'd say there were a few times that I used my intuition, but for the most part, I like having things planned out, backed by facts. And I know that sometimes intuition can be wrong. Harry was constantly doing things based on intuition and placing himself in danger. Like when he went to Godric's Hollow to try and find Godric Gryffindor's sword. It was a trap. Thankfully, I was there to get him out, but I just like having more knowledge before taking action.
Well, often there isn't time to gain knowledge before you have to make a decision. Sometimes it's a matter of seconds that make the difference between life and death.
I agree, and in those cases, intuition may be the only thing you have, but if you have any time to gain knowledge, I think it's the better option.
All right, ladies. Before things get too heated, let's turn to the topic of emotional self-control. Shankman and Allen's book discusses the importance of keeping emotions in check in order to be a successful leader.
Well, I would definitely agree with that. Emotions tended to cloud my mind, so I found that the best thing was to just push them away, to focus only on what was at hand, not really how I felt about it.
Yes, yeah, but you didn't let me finish. Keeping emotions in check doesn't necessarily mean suppressing them. It means keeping a healthy balance, not letting them cloud your judgment, but not letting them bottle up either.
I agree. I think that suppressing your emotions isn't completely smart because they end up coming back to bite you. Trust me, Ron bottled up his emotions while we were looking for Voldemort, and once something small caused him to reveal his emotions, he ended up leaving us for some time because of how angry he was.
Well, suppressing my emotions was the best thing for me at the time. There was no time to deal with them. And since you're criticizing this end of the spectrum, why don't I turn it around for you? Do you think it's healthy to express your emotions so strongly that you let them overpower your decisions? Didn't you do that when you attacked your friend Ron with a bunch of little birds you conjured up?
Well, I can't say that that was the best decision, but maybe my emotions did get the best of me. For the most part, I think I keep a level head. I think there's supposed to be a balance between controlling but not suppressing one's emotions.
You girls seem to have some disagreement. Let's talk about the idea of authenticity, which it says that the leader should be transparent, trustworthy. Hermione, what do you think about this idea? Is it important for a leader to be authentic?
I would say yes. I think that being transparent is actually the best way to gain trust. Knowing you have people around you that are clear with their motives fosters a trusting relationship. That's why I know that Harry and Ron would always have my back. They're straightforward with me, and I am with them. And that only strengthens my relationship with each of them.
Good points, Hermione, good points. Katniss, do you have anything to add?
Well, in theory, I think it sounds good, but once you've been in a world where trust doesn't exist anymore, it's hard to say. Transparency was a dangerous option for me, and most likely would have gotten me killed. I had to keep things to myself and appear strong to have respect. Besides, no one was being authentic with me as it was. Haymitch was basically using me as a pawn to overthrow the Capitol. For me, it became a game of survival, even outside the arena, and authenticity wasn't in the cards.
Wow, I guess I just can't even imagine what it was like for you. I mean, our situation was bad, but at least I had people I could trust.
Yes, it does seem that the two of you are in very different scenarios. And I think that does somewhat explain your varied responses. On to a topic that may be slightly more difficult for Katniss to answer, just considering the environment. The topic of citizenship. Shankman and Allen talk about the importance of recognizing and fulfilling one's responsibility to a community and recognizing interdependence within a community. Katniss, I'd really like to hear your take on this.
Well, I definitely felt like I had an obligation to the nation of Panem, but it wasn't brought on voluntarily. I was forced into my position as an icon for revolution, and once I was there, I didn't really have a choice but to fight. Initially, all I wanted to do was save my little sister Prim from having to go to the Hunger Games. But it turned into something much bigger than that. I have mixed feelings about citizenship because of the way everything happened. I was almost spiteful because I had never chosen to lead the nation in revolution. Honestly, if I hadn't stepped up to do the job, I probably would have been killed. So I guess citizenship was forced. I don't know if my opinion on the matter is a good one because I'm biased and still angry that I had to do what I did.
I'm sorry you have such bitter feelings about it, Katniss. Personally, I was constantly fighting for a greater good. Not just for my friends, but for everyone who would have been affected if Voldemort was successful. So many people banded together to defeat him, and it was only through our collective efforts that he was defeated. I think citizenship plays a huge role in leadership. A leader must be willing to work for her people, not just herself.
Again, two very different opinions arising from two very different situations. Citizenship is important for a leader, but I feel that when society has gone to chaos, as it did for you, Katniss, maybe citizenship is redefined, or maybe not even there at all. All right, well, we have time for one last question. Maybe this one we can get some type of agreement. The law of victory. This law talks about the fact that strong leaders always find a way to win. They persevere and don't give up. Hermione, do you think this is true?
Yes, Caesar, I do. I saw the quality not only in myself, but in Harry and Ron and many others who were fighting with us. We all stayed strong to defeat Voldemort because losing to him was not an option. We had to harness courage that many of us didn't think we had, like when Ron dived into the freezing lake in the woods to save Harry, or when I was getting tortured by Bellatrix Lestrange, yet still wouldn't tell her how we broke into the Gringotts vault. And not to make assumptions, but based on what you said, Katniss, I think you would agree.
On this point, I would agree. Anything but victory wasn't an option for me, regardless of the fact that I was pushed into my position as a leader. I strived to win. I had already lost so much, especially after Prim died, that I was going to do anything I could to end the Capitol's tyranny. I think a leader who really wants to reach her goals must think that victory is the only option and must strive her best to achieve it.
Finally. Well, it was nice to actually hear some agreement on our last topic, too. Ladies, you're both very strong leaders and succeeded in your endeavors, obviously. But it's interesting to highlight your different views on leadership due to the different circumstances that you have to deal with. Hopefully, you gave some leaders out there watching tonight just a little bit of insight on some other things that they can adapt for their own practice. I would like to thank both of you for coming out tonight and answering my questions. And make sure you all look into the books we referenced tonight, the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership and Emotionally Intelligent Leadership. That's all for tonight here on the Leadership Forum for Heroines. Join us next week when we will have the debate between Alice Cullen and Pepper Potts right here on Channel 6. Good night, everyone. Any character. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leadership Forum for Heroines here on Channel 6. My name is Caesar Flickerman, and I will be the mediator tonight for tonight's leadership debate. Our first guest tonight is straight out of District 12 in the chaotic nation of Panem. As soon as I said something about the deal.